Thanks very much for joining today. This is our monthly Adjust webinar for those who are here for the first time. Adjust, we do webinars every month, inviting experts to cover topics such as retargeting, acquisition, attribution, and today we will talk about fraud. So today we have with us as our guest and partner InMobi, and here from Adjust we have our resident fraud specialist Andreas, who you can also see in the video in the background. So we are live, we're here for you to talk about mobile fraud. My name is Fabian, I also work at Adjust in marketing, and here you can see the topic and our guest Arpit, who's going to join us a bit later. First, a few words on the webinar and how we're going to go about it. So it's going to take approximately 45 minutes. This will be split between Andreas from Adjust and Arpit from InMobi. And you can ask questions at any time. So if you're not familiar with GoToWebinar, there's this question module in the control panel where you can just pop in questions. We can take a look at them, I can take a look at them, and then we answer those at the very end of the presentation. And as always, we'll send out the recording and the slides via email after the webinar to everybody who's online now and also to the people that are registered and couldn't make it. Great, so here's what we've prepared for you. Here's the menu for today. So we're going to have a quick intro about mobile fraud, what it is, what it does, and what the consequences are. We're going to talk a bit about the types of fraud and, of course, how to detect it. Very, very important. How do you find out that your traffic might be fraudulent? Fourth, how to interpret fraud-related data. So how to look at the KPIs and interpret them the right way. And as the second part of this webinar, we're going to look at the network approach and how networks should deal with ad fraud. That's InMobi. We're going to present a case study, and at the end, very important, I would invite you to stay and ask questions that you have about mobile fraud, because I think today you have the chance to ask experts and you don't have that every day, so I'll encourage you to do that. All right, before we get started, a few words about Adjust to those of you who don't know us. So Adjust is a business intelligence platform for mobile. We were founded in 2012. Our headquarters is in Berlin. We've now grown to more than 100 employees in many locations all over the world. What makes Adjust special and unique is that we have an open source SDK that connects directly to more than 800 integrated partners. And what you can use Adjust for is, of course, tracking and measurement of your mobile marketing activities. So all types of channels, whether it's email, Facebook, Twitter, Google, you name it, you can track all your campaigns, also post-install events, and tie these back to your initial campaigns. So you have a better understanding of your mobile marketing ROI and how to improve it. With that being said, I wanted to first give it up to Arpit, who's going to introduce himself and lose a few words on what InMobi does.
Hello all, thank you Fabian. Hi everybody, this is Arpit Nanda. I work as a product manager in the performance business for InMobi. My primary areas of focus include measurement and analytics for the performance clients, as well as I look at our anti-fraud capabilities and feature set. Just a few words about InMobi to start off. InMobi is the largest independent ad network, which enables consumers to discover new products and services by providing contextual and personalized ad experiences on mobile devices. Through our revolutionary advertising and discovery platform, developers, merchants, and brands can engage mobile consumers globally. We have been recognized by Fast Company as one of the most innovative companies in the world for 2016, and our user reach on a monthly basis is about 1.5+ billion users. InMobi was also ranked #2 in the Pixelate Seller Trust Index in 2016, which is the first quality rating of its kind, which ranks advertising firms which in general have low invalid traffic. This includes bots, URL spoofing, false impressions, etc., and are really high on transparency. As mentioned, we have about 20,000 global advertisers and work with about 32,000+ apps on both sides of the network.
Okay, hello everybody, this is Andreas from Adjust. Let me start and talk about fraud a little. So the problem is all through the media, and quite high numbers are being talked about. Ad fraud is the total thing that we're looking at, right? That is everything that is fraud in the mobile ecosystem. We're going to talk about some of the ways that you can be defrauded, how to find out how that is happening, and in general, what you can do to protect yourself. To start off, let me talk about how mobile ad fraud impacts your business. So first of all, your marketing budget for each running month is being eaten up by those fraudulent installs, impressions, clicks, whatever you're paying for. And that is not even the biggest problem. The biggest problem is that fraudsters in general, if they manage to put fraud on your campaigns and it goes unnoticed, it skews your campaign data and your performance data, which means you will most likely make false decisions about that. And even if you find fraud and if you detect fraud, there's still a lot of valuable time that goes wasted in cleaning up fraud. So generally, it's a good idea to have a good understanding, good processes, and in the best case, preventative measures to make sure that you're not defrauded. At Adjust, we're seeing two different kinds of fraud that make up more than 99% of the fraud cases that we see. The one, and that's the simpler one, really, because the investment for the fraudster is a lot smaller, is creating fake installs on fake devices, which usually happen through simulation or emulation on server hardware. What we have here is no real user, no real device, no real install. Everything is being faked by software and then rerouted through the internet to look like a legit install. Those are not the devious kind, and they're relatively easy to detect. And again, this is the smaller portion of the fraud. This is basically the beginner stuff. It gets a little more sophisticated with what we call click spam. What is happening there is that you have a real user using a real device, doing a real install, but what is being faked is the engagement with the ad. So in mobile attribution, you usually have the system of last click wins, or the view-through attribution, where the last impression wins. And the point that is being exploited here is the engagement with the user, right? So the bad players spam as many clicks as they can onto as many legit users to cash in on the random chance of a legit user installing an app and using it by just tagging them for attribution with their last click. And this is devious in many layers. First of all, you will most likely be paying CPI prices for your organic installs. And since we talked about how this skews your data, so usually those people can offer very low CPI prices to get high volumes because they already have a user base that they spam. It doesn't cost them additional money to do the click spam. So they can offer lower CPI prices, but on the other hand, the installs that you get look super valuable because you're most likely paying for organic users, which means those users will be the most engaged in your app. They will be the most likely to spend money in your app. And optimizing towards exactly that kind of user bought for the lowest CPI makes you optimize for more of the click spam fraud, which if you repeat that often enough, you will end up paying for nothing but that, because you optimized in a harmful direction. And to make sure that you're aware of both types of fraud and how to see them, the most important thing is to get a full overview about your performance and campaign KPIs. So whenever somebody tries to sell traffic to you and tells you it is the best because, and then only gives you one set of KPIs to look at, that's usually already a bad sign, right? If somebody tells you, you don't need to look at anything else because you're paying a CPI price and all you should be interested in is the ROI or the revenue per paying user, and they only tell you to look at post-conversion metrics, then the first thing you should be doing is look at the other metrics to get an idea of what is going on. And the general idea is, if you look at your campaigns and your performance KPIs, you should see the big picture. The idea is that all of those KPIs in unison need to look A, good, and B, legit, to actually make sense. And if any of those look too good to be true, or they look very, very awful, but juxtaposed to very, very good KPIs in one of the other levels, that is usually an indicator that it's time to dig deep and find out what is going on. So for instance, very, very low conversion rates, but very, very high retention rates, that should be a trigger. Or on the other side, very, very high conversion rates, but very, very low retention rates is the opposite, right? That would be what happens when you have either incentivized traffic being pushed onto you, or you have simulated installs where the user action drops off at a certain point where the script says, now delete the device, start a new one, and start over. And generally, the idea really is to make sure you work your way through your KPIs and make sure that whatever you see is logical, and then combine all your KPIs into a flowing narrative, right? If you're doing display marketing on a content website, or you're doing it native, then you should really figure out for that one channel what is a good impression to click ratio, so click-through ratio, what is a good conversion ratio, how does my conversion and click-through ratios change with different ad media used. So A/B testing is, even in performance marketing, very important to get the initial kickoff. You want to find out which metadata belongs to those pre-conversion points. So where are the clicks originating from? Where are the installs originating from? Is there a disconnect between where a mass of click happens versus where the mass of installs is happening? You want to be looking at your conversion data. What is the mean time to install is a very good metric. Do you see installs clustered on certain subnets or autonomous systems? Is everything in the geo that it should be? Is the targeting being matched? And then naturally, in the last step, what is my post-conversion data? Is the retention up to scratch? Is the retention a lot higher than it should be? Is the retention higher than it is in organics, for instance? Do we see certain clusters in installs where there's no monetization happening, although monetization in general is good? Basically look for outliers and get a good idea of what works for your product or what works for your different products in the different channels. Work that out and make sure you stay in contact with your supply providers, with your network partners. Talk to them constantly about what are good metrics? How is it looking for other people? Where am I in the index? Is there maybe a possibility to get a benchmarking going? And always make sure that there's a logic behind it, right? If you have display marketing or you're doing full site interstitials, then there shouldn't be a conversion rate that is less than 0.5%. That doesn't compute, right? Because the idea is people click that that banner or that interstitial, get to the App Store and make a decision there. You shouldn't be having a drop off than more than 99% on the App Store unless there's a mismatch between the advertisement that was shown and the app that is actually being shown on the App Store. A little bit about what we're doing at Adjust. And I know this is hard to reach because we're doing preventative measures only, which is kind of easy for us because we're working with first-hand data all of the time. So our SDK provides us with all the data we need in the moment where the install happens. And that is not necessarily available to everybody. But what we're doing is, for instance, fake devices and installs, since those can only happen in server farms or hosting services, wherever you have the possibility to rent a server and run scripts on them, run software on them. We're looking for IP addresses that belong to hosting services, to data centers, or to services that are paid for obfuscating where your traffic is coming from, and we allow our clients to filter those installs out and put them into a bucket we call untrusted devices. And those installs will then not be attributed and not be paid for. Another thing that we make sure is not possible for our clients is being asked to pay CPI prices for their organics through click spam. So we have different measures there that in the moment of attribution actually check if there is the correlation between click and install, and if there's click spam happening by looking at the click frequency for that ad media and that device, so that there's not devices that are creating clicks over and over and over to then convert at some point. And again, those installs are being filtered out, not attributed to the paid source, which means there's no CPI price deducted from your budget with your network partner, which means that the fraudster somewhere down the line that is trying to defraud you is getting their cash flow cut right away, which makes it very unattractive for them to keep trying to defraud the campaign. So they will most likely jump off in a matter of hours. Another thing that we have, and we haven't touched that yet, is in-app purchase fraud. The thing is, it's not my forte, and it's not the kind of fraud that I usually combat, right? I'm trying to work against the people that make a living off of defrauding advertisers. If we're talking in-app purchase fraud, that is more like software piracy, where the end user doesn't want to pay the price that you ask for your software, but they're not getting rich off of it, and they're not doing it repeatedly to harm you to get to your budgets. They're doing it to get access to that piece of software. Nonetheless, we have synchronous receipt verification for in-app purchases, which allows us to make a decision if in-app purchase happened within the session that the in-app purchase happens. So we would not even record that in-app purchase if the App Store or the Google Play Store would not give us a positive answer. And with that, I'm very, very close in my time frame. I hope this made sense, and you are asking a lot of questions. And I will hand over to Arpit.
Thank you so much, Andreas. Hello again, guys. So after the insights on what Andreas shared of how Adjust provides features and provides measures to combat ad fraud, what I would like to take everybody through is the InMobi approach of detecting and dealing with ad fraud, and how we believe ad networks are in a unique position to combat fraud, and how they should go about it. So broadly speaking, what we believe is that I want to highlight the key features on the approach which we should take. The overarching objective for an anti-fraud strategy is to protect value for the advertisers, which can only be ensured by providing clean, fraud-free traffic. I think to facilitate this, what one needs to do, what a network needs to do, is to proactively monitor and minimize malicious supplier source. Since we are in a way at the beginning of the marketing funnel and matching suppliers, supply in forms of publishers to the advertisers' intent, the maximum we do upfront to try and prevent any kind of fraudulent activity from passing through. That would help enabling that most of the clean traffic passes through and most of the malicious traffic is stopped at source. Our belief is that the fraudulent supply should be cut off at source, and to ensure this, not only should one have strong onboarding processes, but they should also, in our belief, have stringent ongoing checks to monitor supply quality and campaign health on a regular basis. For instance, some of the onboarding checks which are absolutely critical is a due diligence of the supply to verify ownership of the publisher property as well as adherence to the network guidelines. We should also be blocking unsafe properties upfront, and unsafe properties may include publishers which may be deemed as brand unsafe or which are known to host malware. Also, there are publishers who may not be sending the accurate app bundle IDs or who have blocked WAP domains, and those are the publishers which we should be blocking upfront. In addition, I think any malicious activity by publishers such as account duplication or site subletting should also be cut off at source. InMobi, for instance, manually verifies every publisher before going live. So we ensure that none of the blacklisted accounts are posing as another account while registering. So that ensures that once a publisher has been blacklisted and tagged as rejected, that app does not come back on the network under any other pretense. Also, we have stringent technical checks in place so that we can cross-verify the registered publisher identity with the request, so that the app which was used for the registration purposes is the same app or the same inventory on which the request is coming through and the impression is being shown. A violation of any of such checks put in place entails an automatic rejection and deactivation of the publisher. We activities which we capture. Also, I think it is also imperative for us to have a strong ongoing checks in addition to these stringent onboarding checks which we have highlighted. These ongoing checks should be put in place to prevent ad fraud through invalid impressions and clicks. Some of the practices which we at InMobi adopt is authenticating the data signals shared by the publishers. So a lot of publishers share location or demographic information as additional information, and that usually leads to high eCPMs because advertisers who want to leverage this information are willing to pay a lot more. But at the same time, it is the network's responsibility to ensure that this data is validated. So this information we cross-verify with the InMobi SDK collected signals. So location, for example, we cross-reference that the information provided by the publisher with that we collect through the InMobi SDK to discard and highlight any invalid data. Also, we do rigorous analysis of all the impressions and click patterns so that we can in real time identify bots and scripts and remove all of such automated traffic from the available traffic for the advertisers. So having all of this ensures fraud-free traffic on a proactive basis, but it is also important, and I would want to take some time just to try and emphasize on the unique position which I believe the networks hold in this ecosystem, especially in terms of dealing with ad fraud. Since we enjoy a diversity across both advertisers and publishers, we have the unique capability to measure beyond the confines of a single campaign, and we regularly leverage all of these aggregated insights to fortify our anti-fraud capabilities. Also, we work in close coordination with both tracking partners such as Adjust and also all of the advertisers we are working with to help identify fraud across various stages of the marketing funnel, thereby closing the loop in a way on the mobile measurement ecosystem and ensuring the health of all advertising campaigns which are running with us. And all of this ties into protection of value for the advertisers. But having said that, just having all of these checks, we believe, is not sufficient. It is also equally important to have the right attitude towards combating fraud, which actually also entails an openness to being assessed by fraud prevention tools and a total transparency in this regard. So to action this, what InMobi facilitates is a seamless integration with a variety of measurement platforms. Also, this extends to establishing veracity of the marketing spend. So at InMobi, we have various partnerships, for example, to ensure viewability so that the advertisers pay for impressions only when the ad unit is 100% rendered on screen and visible to the user. And this is audited by independent parties to ensure that we maintain the high standards which we set. Also, we have partnerships with agencies to provide verification of the demographic data signals. So advertisers who come to us and take advantage of the targeting capabilities have a third-party auditing system so that they know if they're paying extra for targeting demographics or location or any of the other data signals which we provide. They can be assured that the accuracy of these data assured of the accuracy of the data signals and that they are indeed targeting the exact audience which they want to. All of these things together can help us maintain the position which we have taken in the first place, which is protecting value for the advertisers, ensuring that the ROI for the advertisers is protected. They are not paying anything more than what they should be, and everything which they are paying is validated and verified at different steps through approaches which we take as a network, and also which are Adjust takes as a tracking partner, and also some of the other third-party measurement services take, so that at each step in time, every dime which they're spending is being validated as accurate and being spent towards the right objective. Considering all of this, so with zero tolerance for any fraudulent behavior and with an aim to build a stronger capability throughout the pipeline on any and all fraud prevention measures, it is InMobi's constant endeavor to deliver high-value, clean performance campaigns to advertisers. And I would just want to take some time to exemplify this approach through a real-life case study of an InMobi advertiser and the steps we took to ensure fraud-free campaigns for them. So this is the instance of a top Asian retailer who is working with a number of networks, including InMobi, to drive user acquisition across top markets in Southeast Asia. And since he was working with various networks which were spending advertiser dollars, the potential exposure to fraudulent traffic was multifold. And it would have a snowballing effect, as Andreas earlier mentioned. If advertisers starts losing budget because of conversions which were present but that shouldn't have been there, and also because engagement could be attributed to unrelated campaigns, that would result in money being diverted to campaigns which were posing as high-performing campaigns but weren't, and due to which there would be an inefficient optimization and inefficient routing of money, and the ROI would not be the most optimal. The solution for that, from a network's perspective, proactively monitoring all of our supply sources to ensure that only the most pristine supply makes it forward. Also leveraging any aggregated trends we have across multiple campaigns within the region to fortify the fraud prevention policies we have. We also worked closely with Adjust on this to ensure transparency in preventing fraud across various stages in the marketing funnel, both pre-serving for the network and post-serving and through installs and post installs as tracked by Adjust. And the most critical factor here was to ensuring transparency with the advertiser on all measures taken by us, so that he's in the know on any and all features taken by us, and so that any of the measures which we are taking are clear to them. They understand why we are rejecting some of the supply which they don't have access to, and what are the reasons behind them. This ensured that there was absolute trust in the value delivered by us because of this transparency. And because of all of the stringent checks put in, we were amongst the best partners with 100% lower rejections than all of the other partners which the client was working with. This also enabled enhanced performance with the right optimizations. And all of this was ensured, and all of this clean traffic and clean performance campaigns were ensured with minimal impact on CPIs. So if somebody says that clean performance comes at a price, not in this particular case, and not in most of the cases which we have seen, we could, because we were being proactive throughout the campaign, and we could ensure that before the marketing funnel actually started, we could ensure that there was minimal impact on CPIs, and we would not allow any of such inventory to stay on for very long into the campaign to skew numbers in any shape or form. So that's pretty much it from our side at InMobi. I hope this was useful. Happy to take questions from this point onwards.
Thank you so much, Andreas and Arpit, for this presentation. Arpit, if you just advance to the next slide, I think that would be great. Perfect. So now it's time for Q&A. Thanks very much for all your questions. I have to say that I was overwhelmed taking notes here and trying to file through all the questions. So there's a lot of them. We tried to answer as many as possible. And yeah, maybe already a quick disclaimer that we'll be continuing to answer those questions until 6 o'clock. So we'll take them as they came in. And yeah, the first question I'll ask to InMobi. So yeah, the question was basically your fraud detection versus Facebook, Google, other networks, and other competitors. Maybe you can lose a few words on this topic and elaborate a bit. So Arpit, this one is for you.
Sure, thanks, Fabian. So I would say that we are amongst the pioneers. Thanks for the question, first of all. And I would say that we are amongst the pioneers in terms of fraud detection. Although, to be accurate, Facebook and Google, by virtue of owning most of the supply by themselves, and here I'm talking mostly about the Facebook app itself, have a lot more information about the user behavior and user performance. But at InMobi, we leverage all of the information which we have across multiple campaigns which we are running, as earlier mentioned. Also, we partner with a lot of agencies to get, say, information about IPs, which may be click farms, for instance, and so on, so that all of the information which we may not be able to collect ourselves, but can leverage through third-party partnerships to ensure anti-abuse, as we call it. We do that. So I would say that that the fraud detection for InMobi would be up there with most of the best in the ecosystem.
Thank you, Arpit. Thanks very much. We'll do a little bit of ping pong. So next one in line is Andreas, and a question for you. There were a couple of questions around fake installs, and I think you took some notes, and maybe you can address this topic.
Okay, the first question that I saw coming in was, what are the most common software types to be used to emulate mobile devices? The most common would be iOS simulator from Apple and Google App Engine for Android. But there's plenty of testing software, self-written software, and emulators for emulating mostly Android devices on Windows PCs to allow gaming, for instance, or using apps in a PC environment. There's any number of different emulators. The most used are definitely the official ones from Apple and Google. But yeah, that's it. That's the answer. The most used ones are those two, and there's plenty of others, and all of them are, or most of them are free, so there's really no hindrance in trying to create that kind of fraud. Second question about faked installs. Can a click farm switch IP addresses when they have been discovered blocked and create a game of whack-a-mole, or is there a way to permanently block them? We're actually not trying to blacklist them, because that is exactly what's happening. You enter in a game of whack-a-mole that you cannot win, because it's very, very easy to switch IP addresses and switch VPN services, and in VPN services pay more to get more unique IP addresses and switch them more often. What we're doing is we're buying an official IP database that doesn't do a blacklist. All they do is daily updates on metadata with the IP addresses. Not even a secret, we're buying the MaxMind IP database, all of it. And from that metadata, we can train our filters, right? If a data center buys new IP ranges, then we will know about it tomorrow. And if the same data center loses or sells a couple of IP ranges, then we will know about that as well. So we make sure that we have as little false positives as possible. And really blacklisting IPs doesn't make any sense at all, because the thing is IP addresses are disposable, and a clean IP address can be used for fraudulent things, and a fraudulent IP address can be used for legit things, and it's really very much up to the question, what is going on right now, right? So if you have a blacklist that works for, let's say, retail fraud or credit card fraud that blacklists IP addresses, that won't work for user acquisition fraud, because it's two completely different things. I hope that answered those two questions, and then I give it back to Fabian and Arpit.
Perfect. Thanks, Andreas. And yeah, just a reminder for you guys, we've got a lot of questions. So later on, we'll also show Arpit's and Andreas's contact info. So if you have more in-depth questions that you would like answered, I'm sure they would like to do that when they have time. So if we don't get to it now, please don't be disappointed. We might even be thinking about Ask Me Anything fraud again in the future, as we have a lot of interest about this topic, which of course is great. The next question again for InMobi and Arpit. Arpit, what specific methods are used for audience verification on your guys' end? Maybe you can elaborate a bit on this. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Fabian. So for audience verification, primarily in addition to these, so there are a certain methods which we do, which, as mentioned, say triangulation across multiple publishers. So for example, if one of the publishers shares demographic data with us and says a person belongs to the 25 to 35 age bracket, what we also try to do is triangulate that across other publishers which may be sharing this data. In addition to that, we try and mine data in terms of behaviors and in terms of app ownerships by virtue of us being in the network in the middle of both app publishers as well as advertisers, and try to see whether the preferences are similar to that of, say, a person in the 25 to 35. So for example, without being typecasting, I would expect females to have certain kind of apps, certain kind of games, and certain kind of entertainment apps on their phone as compared to what guys would have. So a sports app gives a strong indication probably of somebody more youthful and versus, say, a more serious business app being somebody being more aged and working, etc. Some of those informations, and this is very high level, but some of these data signals, in addition to what we purchase and triangulate from the third-party sources, all of this together becomes one giant mix to try and verify the audiences which we have and the data signals which we receive from the SDKs. In addition, we also have third-party audits by most of the leading agencies out there, and they can verify and they can yes, the audiences in regions of interest which we share with our advertisers, so that they can ensure that the target audience which we claim is indeed accurate.
Great. Thanks, Arpit, for this very extensive answer. Next one goes to Andreas. He'll basically answer a few questions in one block, because there are a lot of more general questions and then more specifically also about the SDK and the data that it provides. So Andreas, pass it on to you.
Okay, here we go. So a couple of general questions that came in. What data does your SDK provide? That's a very open question, and I could talk about that for half an hour. So I'm going to cut it short. It's basically all device identifying data. So device ID, what type of device, manufacturer, model, hardware information, CPU, is limited ad tracking on, off, Wi-Fi on, off, a ton of device specific data that we then can use to A, make sure it's a real device, and B, make sure we get an understanding of what situation that device is in. There's nothing magic in there. Everything is open in the. It's basically all the information you can get off the device with general permissions. Nothing fancy. Otherwise, the app that the SDK is in would need to ask for additional permissions, which is a very bad user experience. So we're taking the general things. Second question, is it possible that a subsource that was clean on the fraud detection you provided becomes super fraudulent with more than 50% of the installs being fraud? And if so, where does it come from? So with our detection method that we use to actually deny attribution, it is highly unlikely that somebody figures out a way to cheat them. The thing is, we're open and transparent about how we're doing it and what we're doing, because there's still no way to cheat the system, even if you know how it works. And if we do not detect half of the fraud, then naturally half of the fraud goes undetected. But there is no magic trigger that somebody could use to fly under the radar. I hope this answers the question. If not, please shoot me an email. I'm going to share my email address a bit later, and then we can discuss further. Third question in the general category. You can mark some of the installs as fraud. What would be the next step for the advertisers? What's the best practices? Is there any advice on how to send fraudulent installs, callbacks to networks? So again, what we're doing is already denying the attribution. We're not sending a callback to the networks. We offer a rejected callback to advertisers and networks so that people have an idea of what was rejected and for what reason. But the whole callback thing and sending callbacks that trigger payments is already done here. If an advertiser would try and do that on their own, then it becomes a lot more complicated, because then you would need your tracking provider to send the callback to you, and you need to relay all the callbacks to all the supply partners and networks and exchanges you work with, which is possible. And in that case, if something is flagged fraud, then I would suggest that you don't forward the callback. It's not an easy thing to do, and it requires a lot of know-how and hardware and a good dev team. It's not impossible, but it's a hard thing to scale up. And the last question that I have here is, what if you have 20,000 installs in a tracking SDK, but only 2,000 are confirmed by Apple? That's a hard question. So usually that shouldn't be happening. There is always a discrepancy between tracking provider and App Store, because the App Store counts unique installs by user and the tracking provider counts unique installs by device, because we have no idea what the Google or Apple user ID is and which devices belong to that user. And we shouldn't know that. So a certain discrepancy should happen. It shouldn't be 80%. So the healthy discrepancy, depending on the life cycle the app is in and the geo that you're targeting, is somewhere between 5 and 25%. Everything that goes drastically above that, especially if it's clustered on a couple of sources, is definitely an alarm sign that you should look at that deeply. What most likely happens is that some end user or a bunch of end users that are in contact with one another figured out how to exploit an incentive scheme, and they're installing the same apps over and over on the same devices while still resetting their device ID and most likely using a VPN. So those installs might look new to the tracking provider, but naturally, since the user doesn't change and the user ID doesn't change because those people want to grab the incentives for the other game or for the other app that they're using, the app stores would just see duplicate installs, a lot of them, and the tracking provider might see unique new installs on new devices. And that's it for the general category, and I'll give it back to Fabian.
Yeah, me again. Thanks, Andreas, for answering those. I've looked through most of the questions now, and I saw that most of the questions, actually all of them, for InMobi were already answered. So for one last time, I'm going to give it back to Andreas, who's going to cover the last big category. So all the questions related to click spam. Also, quick reminder that on the slide, you can now also see the contact information for both Andreas and Arpid. If you have burning questions that we didn't get to answer in this session, then I would like to encourage you to send them over to these guys directly as well, and I'm pretty sure that they'll find time to answer those. So without further ado, I'm just going to give it back to Andreas one last time.
Okay, it's me again. Hey. So last big category of questions, click spam. I will try and get to all of them. I only have 11 minutes left, so that might be a struggle. Again, I urge you to reach out and get your questions answered. Let me start. So the open question, can you speak about high retention post-install metric fraud? Yes, I can. So usually what we're having here is if there's a very high retention rate, very high post-install metric, whichever rate, there's usually two things that you can look into. First of all is the poaching of organics through click spam. If the installs look too good to be true, you might just be paying for the real thing. The other thing is if in-app purchases or revenue events don't get checked for validity, that might also be a post-install metric that looks completely blown up out of proportion if those events are just counted and calculated but not checked for validity. So that's another thing where we would have in-app purchase fraud or the faking of post-install events that might be going on. Next question was, what is the organics poaching and how is it done? I'm going to try and be a little more precise, right? So there's two general ways to do click spamming. One is mobile web on undesired content that people don't want to advertise on. Streaming the latest Hollywood movies websites comes to mind, right? So people are taking their iPad to bed, watch the latest Avengers, and in the background that already illegal web page starts blasting clicks for hundreds of different offers, because with the bandwidth that is already taken up by the HD video stream, nobody's going to notice another couple of thousand clicks. and then that website can cash in on the random chance of a user buying something or installing an app after watching the movie. The other way to do it is in-app. So basically native click spamware apps that are either having a lot of daily active users, or the apps are resident in memory. So apps that are constantly running on the phone are just dropping clicks onto their users without the users knowing it. And again, it's the random chance of somebody installing an app, right? So as a fraudster with an app that runs in memory all the time, you would go to as many networks and exchanges as you can and get deals going for the top 10 apps in each category on your platform, and then you blast those clicks out and cash in on the random chance of somebody installing one of those top 10 apps every couple of days. One more question. Won't limiting the attribution window solve the click spam frauds? That's a definite yes, no, maybe a little, not really. So what is going on is click spam doesn't, the click spam and the click spammer is agnostic of when the actual install happens. So yes, you would root out a ton of random chance by making the lookback window smaller, but at the same time, there's still a random chance. So people just need to spam more to accommodate for the smaller window. And on the other hand, you're gonna start cutting out on legit late conversions. Late conversions are a thing, right? There's people that forget about that app that they installed for a day, or that are on a commute now and are gonna look at it later, or just arrived at work and are gonna look at it in the lunch hour or whatever. There is late conversion there, not a lot of it, but there's legit cases there. And if you start basically rejecting false positives, what you're doing here, right? You're creating organics out of actual paid inventory that you should be paying for. That means that those publishers get less interested because their ROI drops, and they will either drop your campaign or ask for a higher CPI to keep up the volumes. So that is potentially quite hurtful. I wouldn't go for drastically short attribution windows, because it's going to be really, really hard to get proper inventory if you keep that up for a while. The next question, big one. So click spamming, a result of click spamming would be many clicks coming in at all hours of the day and days later, and installs are coming in at random times. But on the other hand, the person that asked the question heard about click spamming publishers where the mean time to install is somewhere between 0 and 5 seconds, which he claims is not possible. And have I ever heard about something like this? Yes, I heard about something like this. First of all, there's just a random chance of somebody getting spammed a click just before they open an app for the first time. So that is one thing. Then super low conversion times are actually a thing in server-to-server clicks. So I know that we have a couple of network partners that take somewhere between 5 and 30 seconds to actually process a server-to-server click, which drastically cuts down on the click-to-install times. So that is something that you should be asking your supplier about, what type of clicks are being used. If it's server-to-server clicks, then there is a possibility that that is one of the things that cuts down on the mean time to install. And yes, we've seen something like that, not a lot actually. We also have the occasional click to install with a near to zero conversion time, but then again, those are usually the server-to-server things. Or another thing that could be happening is parallel clicks, where the redirect to the App Store happens at the same time, but parallel to the execution of the redirect chain. Where for some reason, if you, for instance, have a cascade of networks, right? Usually rebrokering happens quite a lot, and if you have 3 or 4 tracking links that need to be executed sequentially, and one of the networks or exchanges down the line has a problem right now with their server response times, then this can also take quite a long time. So it's not unheard of. If you want to get into the deep technicalities of the whole thing, I would also say this is something for a later point in the email, maybe an additional call a bit later. I'm going to try and jump on the last 2 questions in the last 3 minutes that I've got. So next question, may click spamming happen when attribution is made by referral ID or GAID IDFA? It's a definite yes for GAID and IDFA. So click spamming happens on fingerprint and on device ID. Click spamming does not work if the referral ID is mandatory, which it usually isn't, because unfortunately the referral ID is not guaranteed. So it is guaranteed to be generated on click and redirect into the App Store. It is not guaranteed that Google is sending it back to the app in time for the install. So it's a guaranteed 99.9% of times that you would get the referral ID back, but it might take up to 10 minutes to arrive, and attribution at that point has already passed. So if there's a click ID match which is there right away, and then for the next I guess 30 or 35 seconds, we're waiting for a referral ID to show up in the app to send that back to the servers. So again, it's definitely 99.9% of installs where we get that referral ID back, but there is a ratio of installs where we don't get it back or we don't get it back in time, and in that case, we would attribute to any to a legit looking click with a device ID or fingerprint, unless it would be filtered out as fraudulent. So yes, click spamming in that way can happen, but it's unlikely to go through. So somewhere around 99.9% of cases, this isn't the case. And the last question that I see here is, when talking about click spamming, what can the advertiser do to prevent this kind of fraud? Should it be stated in the IO? How can the advertiser ensure not to pay for organic traffic? This is a hard one, because as an advertiser, you usually need to rely on your tracking provider to do this for you. To do it yourself is impossible. Preventing it is impossible. Detection is possible. It's again, it's an endeavor to get there, but it's not impossible to do the detection. For the advertiser, unless you're building your own tracking service, it's impossible to prevent. So I would urge you to talk to your tracking provider and have them figure it out. Should it be stated in the IO? I would say yes. I would actually state as many things and as clearly as possible in the IO to make sure that it is very, very clear what it is you want to pay for and what it isn't. I usually ask clients to go with a positive list. So usually, especially publishers and especially the more shady ones want a complete list of everything that is forbidden, so that when you figure something out that isn't on the list, they can say, well, you didn't say it's forbidden, right? So I usually take the other approach. You do a positive list. This is the things that are allowed, and if it's not it, we reserve ourselves the right to not pay for it, because it's not what we asked for. That makes negotiation with your partners a lot easier, and it leaves you open to, well, if we didn't define it, but we like it, We can pay for it and you can put it into the next IO, but you're at least safe from people that do the nitpicking with your negative list. So I would always go with the positive ones. I'm looking over to Fabian. Is there anything more? Did I miss a question? Am I still in time? I'm over time. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, then I'm gonna drop it and I'll be gone. Thank you for listening. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Andreas. And of course, big thank you also to Arpit and the InMobi team for joining us today. Was definitely not the last webinar we're doing on fraud. I think all your questions and the interest and engagement have shown that there's definitely room for more, and you would like to learn more. And I think it's been great being joined by two experts and thought leaders in their field. And just a quick promo from our side. So there's more reading and further resources you can find on our website on fraud prevention. There's a case study that shows how Rovio does fraud prevention on their end using Adjust. And of course, we're also doing a webinar in December. That's on December 6th. It's about how to acquire users that stay with you, so high potential, high quality users at scale. That's it for today. Thank you again, Andreas. Thank you again, Arpit. Thanks for everybody who listened today and for your questions. And yeah, feel free to reach out to Arpit and Andreas after the webinar. Have a good day and see you next time. Thanks.